Hello and welcome to another episode of Educational. This is Roy.
This is Terry.
So we're a podcast that we're chronicling my journey through aging. Of course, Terry is timeless and hasn't aged in years. And also, we our parents are getting older, and that was really why we started this podcast was, just trying to share information, stories to not only help the aging, but also help the adult children, the caregivers. We usually don't make decisions until it's crisis, and so we're trying to get some information out there to help people make better decisions so everybody can age better. We also have guests on from time to time that professionals in the field or that have really awesome stories, and today is no different. We're excited to have Wendy. I'm going to let Terry introduce her, but she's a fellow podcaster that has a very cool niche to talk to people about. But Terry, I'll let you introduce her.
Yeah, Wendy Battles lives in Connecticut, and she has an awesome podcast called Reinvention Rebels. And it's all about reinventing yourself between the ages of 50 and 90. And Wendy,
Oh.
you can tell better. You can tell us more about it in detail. I would love for you to just kind of give us a little rundown of what is a reinvention rebel.
And why did you also why did this pique your interest?
Well, those are great questions. And so, first of all, Roy and Terry, thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast. I'm very honored to be having this conversation with you about Reinvention Rebels. And I will tell you a very brief story about how I got onto the idea of Reinvention Rebels. And it was very simple. I was meditating one day. This is back in 2019, being very quiet. And as I was meditating, I heard these two words in a whisper: Reinvention Rebels. Reinvention Rebels. And I was like, what? Reinvention what? What does that even mean? Reinvention Rebels. I had no idea, but I wrote it down as I tend to do when I get those moments of clarity or a little inner wisdom bubbling up. And I just noodled on that idea. And I had actually been recently on a panel at Yale. I work at Yale University, and I was on a panel about personal branding. And I had started reading this book. So I started listening to all these personal branding podcasts. And I started reading this book called Package Your Genius. So I already had this idea of Reinvention Rebels. Then I was reading this book, Package Your Genius. And the premise of Package Your Genius is that there is something that each of us shines at. So, whatever that thing is, you might do it, hundreds of other people might do it too, but no one can do it the way that you can do it. You have your own unique spin about it. So, I was reading that book and I started answering all these questions in the book, and I started realizing I've worked with women before. I was a health coach in a prior career, and I've always been interested in women's empowerment. But I started really thinking about, what is it about our world as we age if you're a woman? And one of the things I always think about is that we don't live in a culture that celebrates older women. We live in a culture that celebrates youth. And I think that older women, and men too, have so many things going for them. They have so many possibilities. And so it came to me after being very quiet and doing a lot, like doing the dishes in the quiet and cooking quiet, that I was able to really tune into sort of the inner workings of my mind. And it came to me one day that Reinvention Rebels was a podcast for older women. And the idea really was to celebrate, illuminate, and elevate older women by sharing the stories of women between 50 and 90 that have already reimagined their lives, that have already reinvented themselves. And the idea really was to serve as a source of inspiration for those women that are thinking, I kind of feel like I want to do something different, or I don't know what, but I need a little inspiration. If I can hear the story of someone else, if I can hear what was possible for them, it's more likely that I could see some possibilities for myself. My story might be completely different. I might have different interests, but if I can see a little bit of myself in their story, it might inspire me to take the first step in my own life. And that's how the podcast was
Wow.
born.
That's
And
awesome.
and how long ago was that? Did you say 18 or 19?
That was in 2019
Okay.
that I got the idea. It was in the fall of 2019. I actually thought I had a retreat with some women in November of 2019, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to start in January," not having any idea what's involved in starting a podcast. So I really
Yeah.
didn't know, but then I got some training, and I didn't end up starting it honestly till about a year later in October of 2020. So I've been doing it since then.
Yeah, it's a
Oh
cool
my
premise. I
gosh.
like that
It
because,
really
I
is.
think about, me in my younger days that, we went to work for one company, we stayed there, we never changed lanes. It was always just the same old. And then, that's one thing about this, well, probably the generation, probably two after me is, they started changing jobs and doing things much more often than we did. And I kind of always wonder, why did we get stuck? I guess it was the job security, but we kind of got stuck in this rut as I guess as a society or as a generation. And like now I'm being older, it's so interesting about how free you feel to like do whatever. I mean, you can do whatever you can imagine.
So true. It's a different world. I mean, this is a different world than our parents' world, where you're right. You had maybe had one career, maybe two, but you might have worked at a company for many, many years and retired and had a very traditional retirement. Where now people reinvent themselves in so many different ways with so many possibilities. Where I think age is less of a barrier.
Right.
And
Mhm.
especially if, for older people that are often maybe more tech savvy or can leverage some of the technology to enable perhaps a reinvention
Right.
that, you could live anywhere and do it. It just can feel much more freeing and a lot less limits to me in this world in which we live now. And I think that's pretty awesome that we could do whatever at 80 or 90, and that,
And, and
right?
yeah, I love that you target women, well, your target audience, women 50 to 90. I mean, when we were growing up, it was like, oh, okay, well, you're going to have that long career at that one, maybe two places, and then you're going to get in a rocking chair and sit on your front porch with your
Right.
significant other. And it's like, no, people are, I've all these friends, grandparents, and I'm like, I am not old enough to be a grandparent. Oh, well, I am. I am. But my grandmother wasn't. I mean, I guess she didn't work outside of the home. She worked hard though, and I would have loved for her to be able to listen to you to see what would have transpired from her. How do you how do you find your speakers? How have you built your clan with the podcast and all of that?
That's a great question. And I've done it in a couple of different ways. To be honest, when I started the podcast, I started by asking my friends. And I thought that's a great source because I have lots of friends that are in this age range. I'm 56, but I have lots of older friends as well as, friends in their 50s. But I started thinking about who are the people I know that I find inspiring? Who are the people who would be willing to come on my podcast and, tell their story? And that was literally how I started. And the first person I started with was someone who is 57, and she reinvented herself. She went through several different 12-step programs and reinvented herself to be much more self-aware and to start this business. And because we were in Toastmasters together,
Oh
we,
wow, Toastmaster.
right? And she's also a podcaster. I thought, well, that's a good person to start with, someone who kind of gets podcasting
Yeah.
as a way to kind of get my warm up. So I asked several different friends, and I also have gotten referrals from people that say, oh, so and so would be great on your podcast. Have you thought about so and so does this? They have a really interesting story. And more recently, I have met some amazing women on social media.
Yeah.
And that's how I found. So the person, for example, Arlene Walker, who became a first-time published author at 62,
Oh my gosh.
which is awesome because I know sometimes people work for decades trying to get published.
Yeah.
But she reinvented herself after she had a work injury. She had been a court reporter, and she had carpal tunnel, and she couldn't do that anymore. So she retired early and always had this love of books and reading, sort of like you, Terry, you and I, right?
Mhm.
Always love that, and writing, and published her first book at 62, historical fiction,
Wow.
That was an amazing story.
right?
She was
So
so interesting.
so interesting.
Yes.
Then someone else that I met on social media recently that I interviewed is Natalie. And Natalie is a 61-year young reinvention rebel who, I thought this was fascinating, traveled around the world by herself with one suitcase, really a carry-on bag, going to 7 different countries, all solo travel around the world. And now at 61 is a pitched a 12-week midlife apprenticeship at a bourbon distillery because she loves bourbon.
I remember that story.
Yes.
And I thought that was so cool. So she's lifting these barrels and doing all this stuff and chronicling it on Instagram. And she's going to move to Portugal to retire.
Oh,
How cool
my
is that? So what is a common thread that I guess what has sparked, or if there is one, what has sparked people to do it? Is it because they wake up one day and they feel unhappy? Because a lot of times people, the jobs that pay money, maybe it's not the fun thing or the thing that we really believe in. So do they wake up and say, tired of the rat race, I'm going to do something I want? Are they like the lady you just mentioned that had an accident, so they're kind of I guess pushed into it a little bit more?
It's a mix of different things, Roy, that prompts people that have reinvented themselves. But if I had to boil it down to one theme, I would say it's this desire that people have had, that there's something that they haven't done
Yeah.
that they want to do. And often they've been parents and they've been working, they've been doing other things where they were not the priority. So these are often women who have said, you know what, I'm at the age where I want to make myself a priority. I want to take better care of myself. I want to put my needs for once first.
Yeah.
And I think that is a common theme that many of them share, that they've decided now is the time. What am I waiting for? I want to go for it. I also think that everybody who I have interviewed who has been on the podcast, they are all very curious people. So these are people that are interested in the world, that like to ask questions, that want to try new things, that are adventurous. Like Natalie, Natalie moving to Portugal, becoming an expat to retire there. That's pretty adventurous
Yes.
in
Yeah.
my
very
mind.
cool.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, what an exciting! Oh my
Well,
goodness.
it's not that I'll speak for me. It's not like I have a looming gloom that, the end is near. But I think as you reach a certain age too, you kind of start thinking, all of a sudden my days may be a little bit more numbered than they were when I was in my 20s. That, here's some of these things that we, talked about, we want to do, or we're waiting. And then you just get to a point, it's like, what am I waiting
Yeah.
for? Because there,
Your time is going.
yeah, hopefully we're blessed with tomorrow, but
Yes.
we're not always. So you better get out there and do it.
Exactly. And I think if any of us have learned anything after the pandemic, I guess technically it's not over yet, but because of COVID, that life is so short, it is so precious that perhaps the things that some of us took for granted in the past, that I have all this time and these things will be here, we realize after we've lost friends or loved ones or any of the things that happen in life, I think it's caused many of us to reconsider, take a step back, be much more reflective of how we want to spend our time and be very intentional
Right.
about where we put our energy and what we do. That certainly is true for myself.
Yeah.
I totally have been like, okay, it's good to have a moment to be a little more quiet and
And there's
reflect.
also an old saying that says that, when people are on their deathbed, they tend to regret the thing they didn't try, not the mistakes that they may have made along the way trying. I think that's very telling because, we sometimes that holds us back is like, well, we don't want to make that
Yeah.
mistake. But then, we
Fear.
carry that with us from now on that, wow, I didn't even try. Don't even know where that would have led if I had just put some effort into it.
And how do you get, I mean, how do you get that, I would call it adventurous, to get rid of, how do you quell the fear to be able to learn and be curious and do what you need to?
I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that fear and courage sort of go hand in hand. And I think for a lot of people, it was simply taking one step. They were afraid,
Mm.
but they said, okay, if I, instead of trying to go 10 miles, what if I just went a quarter of a mile and got my feet wet? And then once I get a quarter of a mile, maybe I could go a quarter of a mile more. So I think it's that approach to small nuggets. And, so it doesn't have to be this huge thing that because I'm a queen of biting off more than I can chew and then getting really
Mm.
frustrated and just quitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Roy is too. Well, I am too. I mean,
right?
Mhm.
you
It's,
don't think about the small steps, you think about the big picture, and it's
yes.
looming.
Yeah, exactly. And I will tell you that Natalie was sharing on the podcast episode that the night before she was leaving to go on this trip around the world, she had a meltdown. She said she started bawling and thinking, I can't do this. I'm so scared. I don't know what I was thinking. I think we've all been there when we beat ourselves up
Mhm.
over a decision we made. But then she said she had a drink to calm down.
Yeah.
Then she said, you know what? I'm going to put my big girl panties on and I can do this. And I'm going to and she said, if I can just get to the first place. So this is the perfect example of this. If I can just get to Portugal, she was starting out in Portugal. She was spending a month there because she already had this idea she wanted to retire there and she wanted to really spend some time there. So she said, if I can just get to Portugal, I'll be okay. And she was.
And she was. And she
Yeah.
went by herself. She didn't know anybody.
Not a
Just
soul.
went.
Just went. Just went. She planned everything out. She said she's very much of a planner. She plans everything to a T. And so doing something like this was very much out of her comfort zone, not something she would had done before. She'd always traveled with, a friend or a spouse or her family. So this was completely out of her comfort zone. But I also think that when we can allow ourselves some grace, go a little easy on ourselves, and make those small, measurable steps toward our goal, then it's very empowering. If we can do that and we can see our progress, then I think it builds our confidence. And we said, well, if I can do that, what if I can go a few more steps in that direction? And then I can move toward my goal. So I really do feel like that makes a difference when we can get the courage to just get started.
Yeah. Yeah, we have, like times when you have a event planned or something, you're going to go out to eat, get home from a long day, and you're like, "Ugh, I just feel beat. Don't really want to go, but you just make yourself go, and you get there and you have fun. And I think that's kind of that's a good starting point for these journeys. Is we just have to start. We don't know. Maybe it doesn't work out, but maybe it does. Maybe it leads us in a whole new direction. We just I guess for the last 10 or 15 years I've been much more adventuresome and saying, what, I'm going to give it a try. It doesn't cost, a lot of things, it doesn't cost
Yeah.
anything, just to give it a shot, see what happens. If it doesn't work out, then you really haven't lost. But like I said prior, is that you don't carry that with you. What would have happened if I had tried?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's great to live without regrets. As much as, I mean, we all have regrets about something, obviously. It's not like any of us have a regret free life when we've lived this long. However, to your point, Roy, the more proactive we can be, the more we can dip our toe in and try it. Now, we might find out we don't like it or it's not for us, but we don't know till we try.
That's
Exactly,
right.
exactly.
And as
So
you said, there's so much other possibility on the other side potentially.
right. So what y'all said that the range was from 50 to 90. So have you had a 90-year? I was gonna ask what is the oldest guest that you've had on that has had a reinvention?
My oldest guest, my friend Millie, is 82.
Gosh.
And 82, a live wire, so sharp, so involved in so many things. And Millie had, like most of us, has reinvented herself a couple of different times during her lifetime. And when you get to be 82, you can imagine you probably haven't done the same old thing your whole life. But one of the things I thought was so cool is that Millie had been a nun. And her sister was a nun, her two of her brothers were priests. It was very much, she came from a very Catholic family, and she, was doing this, but she really didn't feel like it was what she was meant to do. And she left. She left and became a nightclub singer.
I
And
love that.
Oh my gosh, that's going from one end to the other, isn't it?
isn't that? I mean, completely. She literally had a passion for music, and she'd spent a lot of time as a nun in Latin America. So she was fluent in Spanish and did all this service work there. So she actually started performing in Mexican restaurants, singing. That's how she got her start. But she literally had this moment of epiphany, and I thought that was so fascinating. And she's reinvented herself since then, again. But I thought that was really fascinating. And she is just a really incredible person. I'll also tell you that an upcoming guest that I'll be interviewing is 87.
Wow.
87, which is amazing. And you would not, if you looked at her, she does not look like she's 87. She looks, I don't know, 60 something maybe. It's pretty amazing. So I think it demonstrates that age is just a number.
Yep.
It's really about our mindset. Do we have an expansive, anything is possible mindset? Because no matter our age, if we do, we can figure things out. And I think that's really the joy of life is, infusing our lives as we age with new possibilities. What if I did X? What if I just tried X? What if I tried X with a friend? Maybe I'm not even doing it by myself. Who could I find to do X with me, whatever X is? So
Just the
I still do.
exposure to these
Oh
new
my
and
gosh.
different elements as well. And you kind of answered my second question I had was going to be what was the most drastic change? But I think we're going to go with that one from nun to nightclub singer. We'll
That
probably leave it
right
that.
there is going
That's
to be hard
major.
to top, but I'm
Yeah.
sure
I
that
don't think we can
you
top that. That's so huge.
so okay, so I'm curious, um, what have been your, I don't want to say fails, but what have you tried that you've decided wasn't for you?
Well, I will tell you that I guess I was probably, I'm trying to think of how old I was. I was somewhere in my 40s. And I guess you could say maybe it was a midlife crisis. It wasn't that dramatic though. It wasn't the like buy some sports
Yeah,
car
yeah.
kind of thing. But I had a corporate job and I didn't like it. I'm not a corporate person, and that wasn't for me. At the
I
same
can't see
time,
you that way.
yeah, it's just not, I'm not the
No,
free spirit. And
you're
I
so
just,
chill.
just feels very buttoned down. That's not my style. So I didn't love my job. Plus, my dad had passed away not that long before. And I just was searching. I felt like I wanted to do, and sometimes, we'd make changes, but maybe not for the right reasons.
Yeah.
We aren't happy, and we think if we just leave and do something else, that will make us happier, which maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. And I had an interest in public health. I'm very interested in how can we use public health to address like chronic health problems, especially in communities of color. So I was very interested in that. And I kind of looked into some of those programs, and they have a lot of master's programs in public health, but a lot of them are either you quit your job to go full time. So at Yale, where I work, they have a fabulous school of public health. But I thought, I'm not going to quit my job at 40 something to go to school full time and have a mountain of debt. I don't think so. I looked at part time programs, but then, you have to do it at night. It could take a long time. And I was like, I really don't want to do that either. But I always had an interest in nutrition. I've always been interested in using food as medicine. How can I use food to help me with different problems? So I found this program in New York called the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, where you get a certificate in holistic health coaching. And I thought, oh, that seems perfect for me. So I went through the program. The program's on the weekends. I did that and I started my own business, but I wasn't really cut out for that. I was not ready for that. I really didn't. I like helping people, but it truly wasn't my passion. Ultimately, it wasn't like this. Like this podcast is my passion. I love it. I love being able to elevate older women that are so often not in the spotlight, that are so
Right.
often forgotten about. And that is a joy. That though wasn't. And that was one of my, I don't want to say fails,
Yeah.
because I do think that everything we do is preparing us for other things, and there are lessons in everything, even though sometimes they're really hard to learn. Right?
Well,
They're not
the other
lessons we
thing,
necessarily want to learn.
Yeah.
those situations could lead you to some, it like you go to a different spot, you're exposed to different things. It may open up new and different interests, to carry you that one step further.
Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. I'll give you one other example. In the 90s, which is going way back, in the 90s,
So long ago.
right?
Dinosaur age.
I I know. In the 90s, I became a voice actor. I did voiceovers.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness.
I really didn't know what I was doing. Literally, I took this class, which is like an evening class where you basically they tell you about the industry, and it's really all to get you to create a demo tape. And so I created this demo tape. I paid them all this money. I made this demo tape. I'd never done this before, so I had no idea what I was doing. And I figured out enough to know that in the state of Connecticut, they used to have a film commission that produced a production guide of all the production studios. This is way back when. I think it's probably different now. And of course, it's all online. But at the time, I got the guide and I literally sent my demo tape that was on a cassette tape, because before,
Yeah.
CDs. I sent my little cassette tape around to all these production studios, and that's how I started getting work. And I still didn't even know what I was doing, but I just went in and acted like I did, and, figured out how to work with producers and take direction. And it was really fun, but it wasn't really a way to make a good living, because there at the time, especially, a lot of the work was men. It was often famous people.
Right.
It's hard to really, make a living doing that. So I stopped after a while, and I probably didn't try hard enough. I think that's one of the times I gave up too easily. I really didn't pound the pavement more, and I wish I had. However, I do feel like that training, that on the job training, and then, since then I took some courses, but that really prepared me for the podcast. That was one of the things that has helped me use my voice for good. So it's interesting how even sometimes when things don't work out the way we imagine or anticipate, they're always, I feel like, working for our greater good.
It's the puzzle pieces in the bigger picture.
It
Yes.
really
Yeah.
is. Well, and I was thinking about, just growing up, I used to use those cassette tapes and I would make my own tapes and I would be Fanny Farkle and I would be reporting on the scene from what was going on
Yes.
over here. My brother was being a jerk over here and my sisters were arguing over there, but my mom was making dinner and my dad was helping her. So I really enjoyed that. I mean, it was just
Love it.
silly stuff. I would give anything to have those tapes back.
I did something similar. I, grew up in New Jersey, and we lived right outside of New York, and I was a big New York Mets fan. I was really into baseball, and I would watch all the games with my dad, and then I'd write up a story and I'd act like I was reporting it because I wanted to be a sportscaster. So
Right.
I really appreciate that story, Terry, about how sometimes those things we did when we were little can spark something sometimes.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Well, and it's the other thing. I think we're lucky in the age that we live in, because if we want to make a change, we can do it in incremental steps. I was just sitting here thinking about, we have YouTube at our disposal. So if you think this is what I would like to do, you can go out and do a lot of research on how to do that particular thing. But then there's also that volunteering aspect that sometimes there are opportunities for us to uh, go try it and see, because a lot of things, it's like once you get into it's like, oh, well, that's not exactly what I thought this was going to be, and I don't like it. So I guess that volunteering it's a way to kind of dip your toe in, see if you're really going to like it. And that's something I talk to when I talk to younger kids coming through high school and college, it's like, hey, I really want to be in marketing or this or that. I'm like, well, you need to go try it. Even if you volunteer in the afternoons, do it for free and see to make sure, because, sometimes things aren't always as they appear.
And yeah, and volunteering is so, I mean, it just warms your heart. It really does.
It does. I remember in high school, I volunteered as a candy striper, which
I
I don't know
remember
I don't know if they even have that anymore. But anyway, it
the
seems
hat.
so.
You have the hat.
I don't think I'd wear a hat, but I remember I had to get these kind of shoes that like nurses wear.
Yeah, the white ones that you use shoe polish, the spongy shoe polish with.
Yes, yes. And we had this little uniform we had to wear. But it did help me understand that I'll never work in the medical field.
Yeah.
I bet that did. Oh my gosh. That is too funny. So how, okay. So small steps, being curious, trying to just opening yourself up, the reinvention rebel, just opening yourself up to new possibilities. You don't have to be put in a box. I mean, it's like age. I'm going all over the place. It's like ageism. You think like me thinking that, after a certain age, I'm going to be on the front porch in my rocker and all that. And that is not what it is now. It's just crazy. I don't know what my question was there. I
Yeah,
guess it was
but
more of a
but it
comment.
is though. I mean, I think what's kind of crazy is that we can have any life we want to have.
Yeah.
And that it's really up to us.
We can
Right? We can reframe our lives in interesting ways. And I think part of it is that now we're living so much longer.
Yeah.
So, you can retire at 60 something and live like 30 more years. So what are you going to do in those 25 or 30 years? Like, why not make it interesting? And why not make it something that is engaging? Because, they say that the more engaged you are, the more you're using your brain, the better it is. Obviously, as we age, as our brain cells are dying. So why wouldn't we want to do something that engages us? And if we're going to be engaged, why not do something that's engaging and it delights us?
Right.
It's fun.
Yeah. Well, do you, let me ask you this. So, you were married, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And children?
No kids.
No kids?
No.
Dogs, cats, fish? Nothing.
No pets. And I really want to get a cat, but I'm really allergic to cats.
Yeah.
And
Get a hairless one.
I know they say that, but I don't think so.
They're kind of weird looking.
I know they're just not they're not the cuddly kind of kitties that I grew up with. So we don't have any pets. And I've never had a dog. I begged my mom, like most kids, for a dog when I was younger, and we never got one. And because that we're busy though, I don't think a dog is really good for our lifestyle. Maybe when I'm not working and I have more time. Although of course the last year I've been pretty much at home. Okay. That would have been a perfect time. But I'm going to go back to the office soon.
It's for a lifetime.
Yeah.
We have two crazy ones. But what I was going to ask was, your parents or your in-laws, have you had any kind of caretaking experience with them? I mean, I'm sure you have, but any specific issues that they've been working on, downsizing, moving into a retirement community, anything like that?
That's such a great question, Terry. I'll say that my mom, my dad is deceased, but my mom is 88. She'll be 89 in a few months. And she has been incredibly healthy until more recently. And it's nothing terrible, but it's just really age catching up with her.
Yeah.
But her mind is very sharp. So that's great. She doesn't have memory issues, and she's up until really recently been very involved in things. So she keeps her mind very active. She volunteers for things, to our point we were talking about earlier. And she's just starting to slow down just a little bit more attention, but she lives on her own. She lives 10 minutes from us. So what's great is that she can live independently, that she's, I'm doing a little bit more to support her, but it's nothing major. So that's really good. And my husband's parents are my husband Bruce's mom is in her late 70s, and his dad is in his mid 80s, but they are amazingly healthy. His dad is so healthy, he does not take a single medication.
Oh, wow.
That
Interesting.
Not
is
nothing.
crazy.
It's crazy, right? It's amazing. And they are just very active. He makes antennas for ham, and he sells them at these ham radio shows.
Wow.
And he just is someone who is very engaged and uses his mind all the time and has a lot of interests. And they don't slow down. They go to Florida in the winter as snowbirds,
Mhm.
and they're back up here in the Northeast now for the summer and the fall. But so we're, knock on wood, we are very, very fortunate because we have so many friends that have aging parents that have major health issues or have some form of dementia or
Mm.
something that is just wrenching emotionally, physically, the kind of things that make it very difficult. It's just difficult to navigate aging when we get to a certain age.
Yeah, and I think that's a good transition to like, and I'm sure there have been a lot of studies, but I think that people who are engaged and trying new things and always learning and doing this reinvention, I would tend to say that they have probably more fulfilling lives for sure, but they probably tend to be some that live longer because, that model of back in the day, you retire, you go sit in the chair, and it tend to go a little bit sooner than those that are active and always looking around trying to find something different or keep them engaged, something that they want to get up for every morning.
So important, Roy, to have something to get up for, something to motivate
It
us.
Yeah.
is.
I was thinking about my friend Joy. They have a family law firm. Her dad is, I think, 93 or 94, and he goes to the office every day.
Yeah.
And he still runs in 5Ks,
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
man.
and he's amazing. So I think that this idea of aging has been rewritten
Yeah.
in really interesting and bold ways if we decide to sign up for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But there was one other question I wanted to ask
No,
you. So about your mom. Sorry. What would she say if she were on your show? What would you ask her? What would you want to ask her?
I would want to ask her about how she has been resilient. I'd want to ask her because she has reinvented herself. I mean, her parents got divorced and she kind of started over in her 50s, and she has done all kinds of things and carved out a really active and interesting life. So I'd ask her about resilience and what she thinks the key has been to her being so healthy and so vibrant for so long. I would really like to hear about that. That's one question I would definitely ask her. And to be honest with you, Terry, I've been trying to get her on the podcast for quite some time.
Oh, good. Do we need to petition? Do we need to do we need to start calling her? Let's give her a phone number. I
Maybe,
would-
maybe. And, we've been working on it, and she had, after the holidays, the Christmas holidays, she had this cough. So that was really kind of getting in the way. And then for a few months, she wasn't feeling that well. So that got in the way. But I really, really think that she has had such an interesting life.
yeah.
And I just think that there are so many things we could talk about. And she very much feels like, well, honey, I don't know if, I listen to your guests and they're so amazing. And I don't think my story's that great. And I'm thinking, Mom, you would inspire so many
You
people.
would.
Yeah.
So I'm
That would
working
be
on her.
awesome.
I'm
We
working
have
on
to
her.
get her.
Right?
You've got to
Yeah.
get her. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Roy. Like, where were you going? Do you remember?
Oh, no. I was just talking about the model. I think the model of aging has changed, and a lot of things. I think, in the agrarian society, there wasn't a lot to do, but now we have so much technology, so many advantages that, we have the funds typically to do a lot more than what they ever had in the past, that it's probably never been a better time to grow old. And, we have the technology at our disposal to help us reach across the country and talk to people like you, to our grandkids. And then also it gives us a lot of opportunities to do these uh, back in the olden days, if you wanted to, maybe uh, quit doing this kind of farming, your other option is go do some other kind of farming where it was very, very physical. But now, their technology lets us do can do this, do things up into our age, to our, late ages without having to have a lot of physical exertion.
Absolutely. So it does mean that there are so many more possibilities
Yeah.
for us. And I think that's pretty awesome
Yeah.
that the sky's the limit.
Well, and the older I get, the more I want to hear that because I don't want to hear that inside. I'm still 18, you know?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I think especially for older women, because you look in the media, even on the news, there might be two anchors, a man and a woman, and it's okay for the man to have gray hair.
Distinguished.
Right. But not for women. And I think that the more we can see images of older women who show up in all kinds of different ways,
Yeah.
the better. The more we can see older women portrayed as very vibrant and full of life,
Right.
the better, right?
Right.
To try to change that narrative.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I love that.
Well, Wendy, thanks so much. You're doing awesome work. We can't wait to hear more episodes. You want to give us a little teaser about something? I know you talked about the one that's coming up, but you got anything else you want to tell us a little bit about?
I do. I will
Okay.
tell you that I have an interview coming up with someone who's in her 70s
Okay.
who recently became a model.
Wow.
Yeah. So not modeling in her 20s or her 30s or even her 40s, but just became a model. So when we talk about changing the narrative and what's possible, this is such a great example
Yeah.
of what we can do.
Brings me to one last question. I promise I know we're running late. I'll let you go. But so the people that you've talked to and even that you haven't aired yet, so is there a connection between this next step, or are most of them like, from the nun to the nightclub singer,
Yeah.
or some of them like, well, I was doing this and then I kind of moved over into something related? Is there any correlation that you're seeing in that?
Like how they find it, how they
Well,
can.
no, just like if it's related, like, I don't know, if maybe you're a preschool teacher and then you move over to
Oh,
making school supplies or making stuff for kids, it's kind of like related.
an
Whereas,
extension of what they
yeah,
did before.
yeah, kind of in the same realm of area.
I would say that yes and no. Some people absolutely.
Yeah.
That one of my friends was on last in season one, Denise, who's 68, and she has been a trainer for many years. She did a lot of diversity training, and she started something very related called Ubuntu Storytellers. And it's people of color telling stories and then they have all these discussions about diversity and inclusion. So they do these workshops. So it's very much related. So that's a great example of someone who did something that has been inside them. She's a great storyteller and
Right.
that's related to what she's done in the past. But then there are people like Lukia. Lukia just turned 50. She was on the last episode that came out a couple of weeks ago. And in her 40s, Lukia was unhealthy. She was obese. She was in debt. She had this six-figure job in public education, but hated it. And she literally transformed her whole life. She quit her job. She lost all this weight, not all at once, of course. Again, this idea of each year she had sort of a milestone, but she just said, what am I doing? Like her parents had died. She lived in Chicago. She always wanted to live where it's warm. She moved to San Diego. She started a coaching practice and that didn't work out the first time, but then she did it again. And now it's very successful, coaching midlife women. But her story is totally inspiring. Like this has been one of my favorite episodes, and they're all so awesome for different reasons. But she is so bold and interesting and just encourages women and coaches them about what is possible. And she's an example, though, of someone who turned their life around like a 180. So it was very different
Yeah.
than it was before. So it varies. It's a mix though. It's a
Yeah.
mix from these women.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I think that, we do things for a lot of years. We have skills. So, sometimes it's easy to transfer into that next thing that's
Yeah.
pretty much related. But then sometimes we have that deep seated desire that, we've always wanted to, and I'm not going to get over it. Sorry, I'm going to stay hard. Like I've always had this desire to be a nightclub singer. And so I just went for it in something that was totally unrelated for, so that's good. We never know where that opportunity is going to come. We just have to keep our eyes, our heart, our mind be open to everything coming at us.
And it's so important that all of us need to lift each other up, but we as women need to lift each other up and not, be catty and jealous and ungrateful that somebody else is doing well. It's just so important that we do that. Women, we need female power. We do. We need to empower our kids, each other, all of it. And
Absolutely.
you're doing that, Wendy. I love your podcast. I absolutely love it.
Thank you so
Yeah, there's enough
much.
out there for all of us. We can all be successful. It's not a zero sum game. We can all be, and we should all help each other out.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
what she talks about is really, it's all inclusive, but just happens to be focused on women because men definitely should listen to it.
Yeah, totally. And you know what's really interesting? What's really interesting is that because I do have men listening, and one of my colleagues who is 22 and just graduated from college loves it, is very inspired, because I think even though it's targeted for older women, the reality is that the themes we talk about are universal.
Yes, they are.
Well, Wendy, thanks so much for giving of your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and we just wish you a lot more success. And we're going to keep listening and see what the next story and the next adventure that you've got to bring to us. So thank you for taking the time out today. Before we let you go, so what is a tool or a habit? What is something that you do in your life daily that adds a lot of value? And it could be podcasting, it could be at your work, or it could be your personal life, just something you don't feel like you could do without.
Meditation.
Okay.
Meditation is the first thing I do every morning. I get up, and before I do anything else, I meditate. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 20 to 30 minutes. It might depend upon how much time I have, but that is my number one priority. It is what grounds me and centers me, is what helps me tap into my inner wisdom to help guide me. That is my true north. So I love starting my day doing that.
Cool. Yeah. That's something that we've got into more lately, trying to do at least 10 minutes a day. And it's amazing the difference that it can make. And when you kind of set your intentions for the day, and then also, if things get kind of a little bit rough, it never hurts just to take a minute, take a few deep breaths. It can help you a lot, help you out a lot.
Exactly. So
All
thank
right.
you both so much. It has been such a pleasure.
Well, you bet. So tell us, how can we find the Reinvention Rebels? And if I just don't want to get too much in your business, but if there's people out there that maybe have a really good story, they may want to reach out and see if they're going to be show worthy or not.
Of course. There are, first of all, many different ways to listen to the podcast. And it starts, it's on every platform out there. But of course, the big ones: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, etc. You can go to my website, reinventionrebels.com, and listen. But anyone also can reach out to me either through my website. There's a contact form, or folks can email me, reinventionrebels@gmail.com. I am always interested and looking for really interesting women that have great reinvention stories. And I'm always open to new possibilities. So I'd love that. If you've got an idea, let me know.
All right.
And through Instagram, which is where we happen to meet each other.
Absolutely. Yes. People should come.
Instagram is a great,
isn't it? It's a great vehicle, and it's really fun. And I've met so many amazing people like the two of you just from in, engaging and interacting with different people. So yeah, that's a great way also to just see some of the things I share. I share all kinds of inspiring things,
Yeah.
and it's just a lot of fun. So but many different ways to reach me.
Okay.
And do.
All right. Well, thanks so much again, Wendy. Y'all reach
Yes.
out, give a listen, and hear some of these amazing stories that she has to come, the ones she's already got out, but the ones to come as well. So that's going to do it for another episode of Educational. Of course, I am your host, Roy.
I'm Terry.
You can find us at www.educational.com. We're on all the major social media platforms, Instagram, mostly where we hang out. We're on all the major podcast platforms as well, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, please reach out. We'd be glad to get it added on to make it easier to find. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your health.